listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. We are talking with Jon Hartley from the Hoover Institute. He is an economist and a policy fellow. And Jon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Martha. Honored to be here.
So, we're in a tough place right now, I think, those of us that are conservatives and are Republicans and have supported President Trump, because the economy is not turning around quite as fast as I think a lot of people hoped it would. I know I've heard a lot of people on our team say, it seems like the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. It's harder for my kids to get onto the property ladder. Interest rates are still high. I think the key is wages more because, prices aren't going to go down unless we have some kind of major collapse. They're not going to go, they might not increase as much, but you're not going to have them go down unless we have some kind of major collapse, and nobody wants that. So am I overreacting to what I'm hearing, or are there real concerns out there about where the economy is right now?
Well, I think if you look across America, there's very much a divide, I think, between blue states and red states. You go to blue states, it may be the case that wages are higher there, but costs are so prohibitively high, from housing to healthcare to taxes, that what's going on in half of America, in blue state America, is that costs are so high that they're higher than people's wages, so much so that people are leaving and people are going to red states. So I think at some level, if you sort of look across the country at the red state versus blue state model, states like Texas, Florida, and others are beating the Californias and the New Yorks. And you're seeing this just from patterns of people who are leaving blue states, pursuing more opportunities in red states. So, if you look across the country at an aggregate or national level, we've seen this year actually some of the best GDP numbers that we've seen in decades. We've got real GDP numbers of 3.8% for the second quarter of 2025. It's the first full quarter that President Trump was in office. And if you go by the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now numbers, they're forecasting a 4.2% real GDP increase for the third quarter. So we're living in this AI CapEx boom right now that I think some people may not be fully appreciating quite yet, but at some level, this is not just a tech story. This is a story about infrastructure investing. There's new data centers being built across states all across America that's providing jobs. You've got there's an energy story that's across multiple sectors of the energy ecosystem, and that's across the country as well. So I think if you look at inflation, comparing where inflation is at right now, it's 3%. Compared to the height of where it was in the Biden administration at 8%, prices are far lower today. So I do think that there's a lot of Democratic messaging out there that's, I think, trying to smear the president's record or just this whole boom period that we're currently in. I think prices will keep falling and hopefully will continue to fall. You have to remember, it's the Jay Powell Federal Reserve that was too slow to raise interest rates, in part in 2022. They were touting team transitory for a period of time, and we're only at 3% now. The president's going to appoint a new chairman of the Fed sometime by May of next year, and that person, I think, whoever it will be, I think will be more equipped to deal with price surges should we see them again in the future like we saw after COVID. So I think we're actually on a very good trajectory if you compare to the Biden administration. Then if you look at red states versus blue states, there's increasingly more opportunity that's cropping up in the red states. And I think you're seeing that despite people who are voting with their feet.
Yeah, I think, I think that's right. I think the biggest challenge, too, is that I saw a report recently that the average first-time home buyer is now 40 years old, which, of course, was very different than my experience. I'm 66 years old. I'm a young baby boomer, so I've been on the property ladder since I was 22. And my first house had 13.5% interest rate, okay? So, we've been through difficult times like this before. So I think that's the biggest challenge as we go into this midterm election, is that we've got to really figure out how to message this economy in a way that we're not saying to people like the Democrats did last year, quite frankly, oh, no, you're wrong, the economy's great. And I think that what we have to do is really communicate better what we're doing.
Absolutely. And if you look at the president's One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed in July, there are a lot of pro-growth provisions in there that give full permanent expensing to R&D equipment. I think capital expenditures, property, plant, and equipment. Property now or structures are getting full expensing for the first time ever. And so these things are critical when it comes to promoting investment in jobs and hiring and wages. So one, there's that, and we're only just starting to see some of the effects of that, and we're seeing that not just in say the tech sector, but across industries. So that's just starting to come online now, and will continue to come online in the years to come. And I think the point that you mentioned about home ownership and really just the cost of housing is so critical. If you look at the most expensive housing markets in America, these are all largely in blue states. These are the New Yorks, the Los Angeles, the San Franciscos, the Washington D.C.s, the Philadelphias, and as well as the Chicago. So why is this the case? It's the case because you have these onerous land use regulations that largely are older Boomer Democratic voters who don't want to vote for new housing supply, and because of that, housing's getting extraordinarily expensive in those places. If you look to red states, look to Houston. Houston doesn't have any zoning laws essentially, and they have some of the cheapest housing across America going across metros. So I don't think it's a surprise why people would want to. Certainly, young people, they want they want cheap, affordable housing, and red states have stepped up and are giving it to them. And so I think that's partly why you're seeing more opportunity in these places, why you're seeing people move to these places, while the blue states continue to be extremely expensive and only affordable to older, wealthier individuals and households. So I think blue states have a ton of work to do, and hopefully some of those blue states can become red states in the future. But I think if you look across between the parties, the economic policy platforms, I think the distinction is clear that it's the GOP that's offering economic growth and affordability when it comes to housing, when it comes to all these things that we've seen enormous increases in the cost of living, particularly in blue states in the past decade.
Well, I look forward to those things getting better. And I tell you, it's funny, I don't know how much you follow college football, but I'm a huge SEC football fan. And we just had some new data that came out saying how not only are people moving to red states, from blue states to red states, they're going from colleges in blue states to colleges in red states. The application rates are way up, and the number of students from the Northeast going to colleges in the Southeastern Conference is up about 93%. And, so this movement to the Sun Belt or the SEC or whatever you want to call it is going to continue, because if you go to college somewhere, a lot of times you have an affinity for that place, and you end up staying somewhere close to where you went to college. And I think we're going to see, it's funny, Andrew Young, who was the ambassador, he also worked in the Carter administration. He was the mayor of Atlanta. He was on my show a number of years ago, and he said desegregation and air conditioning will make the South rise again. Okay, and it was funny. It wasn't just that; it's better economies. We have better economies in the Southeast and in the South and the Southwest, and people are drawn to that.
Absolutely, and he's totally right that if you look at the stretch of history, air conditioning has been a huge enabler across the world for workers to be able to move to warmer climates. I mean, this is something that I think is true in places like Singapore, and true in places like Indonesia. It's totally true, especially for the South. I mean, the South, I think, if we go back, 100 years, was not necessarily, I think, seen as a place of, burgeoning industry, but apart from sort of maybe, agricultural, textiles and so forth. But there's no question that today, I mean, we've got some of the biggest booming businesses that are moving there. That obviously from a taxation standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, you can't get much. You can't really get any better in the United States than in places like Texas and Florida. And I'm totally with you on schools. In the SEC, I mean, and in the South, across the country, outside the coast, that these schools are offering students community. And not just some sort of, maybe a coastal elitist kind of network, which is maybe why other people go there. But you get community, you get a network that provides amazing opportunities and lifelong friendships. And I think for young people especially, who are looking for purpose out there and looking for meaning in their lives, which I think is maybe part of this whole crisis that the young people are facing today. I think that they're looking at these schools and seeing that they're offering them more of that than perhaps some of those other schools were. So I'm with you there, and I think it's been an amazing weekend between schools like Notre Dame. I think put up 70 points, which is unbelievable. It's almost like a basketball score. I'm also a Cowboys fan, so the Cowboys comeback last night was pretty unbelievable. Even though the Cowboys have a lot of room to go. I mean, beating the Eagles is great, but it was a historic comeback. But I think they've got a lot more work to do if they want to be taken seriously in the NFL.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Anyway, Jon Hartley, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Martha.
Thank you.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and it's so great to welcome my next guest. Al Hodge is the founder of Hodge Consulting Services. He's had 40 or more years in economic and community development. He led chambers in Charleston, Savannah, and Rome, and he accompanied me on a trip to Israel a few weeks ago. And I'm so glad to have you on the show, Al. Welcome.
Thank you, Martha. It's great to be here.
So what a trip that was, right?
It was incredible. And, of course, lots of highs, emotional highs, and emotional lows. But such good takeaways and made friends there, as well as those like you on the trip.
Yeah, it was
great crew.
I thought I didn't know what I expected. I mean, I'd never been to Israel, and I expected to be wowed because it was the Holy Land. I mean, for me, it was being able to see those places where I had read about them in the Bible and be able to look at those and look at the places that Jesus had been. But for me, I think the biggest takeaway was just the complicated nature of how these folks interact. And they do it really well, and I think we could learn a few things from that.
Well, absolutely we can learn from that. They get along well, not perfectly, but get along well despite all the differences. And obviously, even during wartime, when they are threatened almost daily, one of the sad, in addition to the Novo site, and I know you've already talked about it on air, and the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum, the daily reminder of what Israelis go through with shelters in their home, as well as bomb shelters along the streets. And it was it was heart-wrenching to see these shelters in children's playgrounds. That is the reality that Israelis have every day. And perhaps some of that, the enduring quest for life, as we heard some of the speakers share, but perhaps some of that is a reality for folks to get along.
Well, and it's the hopefulness of the people. I mean, a lot of these folks we met, Arabs, Christians, Muslims, Jews. They are hopeful about the future. They have big families. I mean, that to me is a sign of hope for the future. You know, when you have a big family, they have big families. They understand the kind of community service. And I heard many, you and others that we traveled with, talk about this conscription thing, that everybody serves in the military. And I'm not saying that we need that here, but there is something that unites them because they have all served to protect their country.
That is truly good insight, Martha. And whether in the United States, back to your earlier point of we need to get along together, we also need to protect the USA, best country on earth, even if it's not military, then public service of some sort to give back for the freedoms that we enjoy and to protect and expand the freedoms that we enjoy.
So what was your favorite part of the trip?
Well, the emotional highs, walking where Jesus walked.
Yes.
Being at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was just overwhelming for me. Having a church service among us with next to the Sea of Galilee was touching. And then, of course, being where Jesus taught the Beatitudes, which, again, everyone everywhere can learn from and live by. I'm looking in the mirror as I say that.
We all need to do that, don't we, Al?
Yes, we do. So all of that was really touching for me, and I was fighting back some tears from time to time. It was really that emotional for me. Those were my favorite times.
Well, and
it was also.
Oh yes, go ahead.
It's also fascinating to hear from the variety of speakers that we heard at the Knesset, for instance, both within the coalition party of Bibi Netanyahu as well as the opposition party to the prime minister. There's so many, take your pick, military, government, public policy, the religion, culture, just so much of it was very meaningful and so many takeaways. You're exactly right.
Well, and of course, our group that went was with the American Israeli Education Foundation, which is a part of AIPAC, and we did not go with our spouses. Okay, so we were all there individually, and I can't wait. I mean, it'll be a couple of years, but I want to plan a trip where my husband and I can go back to some of those same places.
Cheryl and I, in fact, are going to do that. We have, subsequent to the trip, we have reserved a spot. So, yes, we plan to go together. And then, of course, I'm continue to be interested in innovation and technology. And Israel, I have not done this scientifically, but in my opinion, on a per capita basis, Israel is the most innovative country in the world, especially when it comes, of course, to military defense, information technology, cybersecurity, healthcare, and the pharmaceutical and other types of sectors that Israel has done. And I'm going to go back and learn more about the innovation that they're doing.
So we have to talk a little bit about our trip home, because we got caught. We kept hoping we weren't going to get caught up in the government shutdown, which was going on that Sunday we came home. And we found out, during our last day, that our flight leaving Israel had been delayed by 6 hours. So we left the hotel 6 hours later, and then got into Newark. And then you and I spent pretty much the whole day in Newark Airport.
Yes.
Along with the rest of us.
Yes, it was not exciting. It was the opposite of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it was so interesting because our final thing, so you got on a flight before I did, the other three of us that were going from Atlanta. There were 5 of us that went to Atlanta, and I think 1 got out, then you got out, and then there were 3 of us that were waiting. And you so kindly offered me your seat, but the lady explained that if you gave up your seat, then it would go back into the mix again, and that I may not get it. So I said, you go. But we got on the last flight to get out to Atlanta that day. It was supposed to leave at 4. It left at 1:30 a.m. And it was so funny because there was a guy with a boombox, and as soon as we found out we were going to actually get out, he started playing Celebrate on the boombox, and people started dancing in the gate. And I went up to the guy and I said, you may have avoided some fist fights by what you just did, because people were frustrated, as you would expect. They've been waiting all day, all of that. And so it was crazy. So once you got home, was it fairly easy getting through?
Yes, back home, yes. And it was, I actually I went as far as Marietta, spent the night with my daughter and her family in the wee hours of the morning. So I sneaked in with her permission earlier, of course. And but it did take a little while to get readjusted, and I'm attributing it to, as you said, the 6-hour delay, which was then leaving in the wee hours of the morning, plus coming back and all of that. So quite an adjustment, but definitely by all means worth the trip with you. And again, everybody, we bonded with everyone. It was really good group, and you and I both now have new friends.
That's right. Al Hodge, he's the president and CEO of Hodge Consulting Services, joined me on the trip to Israel. And Al, have a very happy Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, thank you, and have a blessed Thanksgiving, and enjoy your cruise.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Chris Carr, our Attorney General, and Chris is on the phone with us today. Chris Carr, you're welcome to the program.
Good morning, Martha. Always great to be with you, and thank you for not playing the part where I said that the Falcons this was going to be their year.
That's right. I had to get it off before then. That's for sure.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Listen, before we get into the interview, we had this big drug bust here in Gainesville yesterday, and we've had a couple of questions that when something like that happens, we had a couple of questions this morning when something like that happens. What's the involvement of the Attorney General's office?
Well, it can be that we would prosecute it. In this particular case, it was the involvement of both the feds and the sheriff's office, from what I have seen.
Yes.
So in that case, it either can be prosecuted by the feds or in the U.S. Attorney's office, or it could be the local DA. We can handle anything that's gang related. So if it has a gang component, and this would appear to me that it would, we could prosecute it. But that's not necessarily the case here. But look, let me commend everybody that was involved in this. Think about the lives that are going to be saved because of what law enforcement did. And if we can play a role in it, absolutely we'll help in any way, shape, or form. But real proud of what happened yesterday in Hall County.
Yeah, it was big news, let me tell you, because I think we've been focused so much on fentanyl for the last couple of years, rightly so, that we kind of forgot that we have this meth problem that goes on too.
We do. Cocaine is on the rise too, because there's been so much focus on opioids and on fentanyl. But again, Martha, the thing I think to remember is fentanyl is being laced in everything, including meth, including heroin, including marijuana. And so again, it all is an interplay. But again, at the end of the day, it's destroying lives. So you got to have that prosecution piece. You have to have that law enforcement piece. We got to go after those. And again, I'll say again, if you're a drug dealer and you lace anything with fentanyl and someone dies, I think you should be prosecuted for homicide. Then on the flip side, we got to be able to have the resources to really help those that are struggling, that are addicted, that are in need. And I'm proud that we have $1 billion coming to this state as a result of the opioid settlement, that will go to treatment, and it will treat opioid addiction, but it will also treat those that are struggling with alcohol or, heroin or meth or whatever it may be. Because that's the issue, really. If you are not in an urban part of this state, it is very difficult to get treatment, and law enforcement are having to arrest the same people over and over again. But remember, jails are not treatment centers.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And this year, my husband's the doctor at the Hall County Jail, and we have a nursing business. And this particular year, we've added the mental health side of it. And we're working closely with Hall County Sheriff's Department and inside the clinic, inside the jail, to really kind of help on the way so that we can reduce recidivism in this area. And we've made some progress, but it's a hard slog. Let me tell you. It really is. It is, and I've enjoyed working with Sheriff Couch too. He's been just a great partner to me. But to your point, I'm so glad to hear y'all focusing on the mental health piece as well. Because again, look at our jails; they're full of people that are either struggling with addiction or other mental health crises, depression, bipolar, you name it. We've got to provide help to our law enforcement officials. Hospitals aren't treatment centers; they're hospitals. They're trying to deal with acute care, as you know well as anybody else. We have to have a plan to be able to deal with it. And when I'm governor, we will. We're talking to Attorney General Chris Carr, and he is running for governor, and I am supporting Chris. And I think he is the best choice for governor because of his story, because of what he has done. And we want to talk a little bit about that today for people that may not know you, to just kind of talk a little bit about where you came from and what your goals are. Yeah, and I appreciate, I think for millions of people, Martha, Georgia has been a beacon of hope. And that was for my family. My family moved here in the late 70s because my dad had a small business and his entire industry was down here. So we moved to Georgia because, Georgia just made the most sense of all the southeastern states that my dad covered in his business. But I saw some struggles. I saw what happens when he was in the van business. So I saw what happened when the federal government changed the fuel economy standards and changed his whole industry. And my folks said that at one point we had about $16 in the bank at one point. But I saw my dad turn things around and work hard and had a successful business. But nothing was given to me. I had to cut grass, and I worked at a record store, Martha, when there were actual record stores. So any of your listeners under the age of 40, Google what a record store was. It was a fascinating place. But then, delivered pizzas and that type of thing. But in the Carr house, you got a driver's license. You didn't just get that driver's license. You had to get a job as well. So I worked my way through Georgia. I borrowed and worked for undergrad and law school. But at the end of the day, that's the way most Georgians have had to do it, is they've had to work hard. Nothing's been given to them. And I want to make sure that Georgia is that same place of opportunity for them as well. That's why I'm so focused on jobs. And proud when I was the Commissioner of Economic Development, we started this run as the top state in the nation for business, because jobs change families, they change and transform communities in our state, and I want to make sure we continue to do that. And then tell us a little bit about after college, what you did, because you have an interesting resume. Yeah, so I worked for Georgia Pacific right out of college, decided I'd go to law school, but that's also when I went to work with Senator Isaacson as an intern. I'd gotten to know his son Kevin at the University of Georgia, and Johnny ran for the Senate in '96, and so I interned there. We weren't successful in that race, but then I went to law school, practiced law at Alston and Byrd for a period of time, went to the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, which many of your listeners will know, a great conservative think tank in our state, and then I went to work for Isaacson when he ran for the Senate in 2004. Managed his campaign. We won. I went to D.C. for 3 years as the deputy chief of staff, and then was chief of staff for 6 years before Governor Deal appointed me Commissioner of Economic Development in 2013. Did that for 3 years, and I am now in my 10th year as the Attorney General of Georgia. Just all have been great honors to me. Yeah, and I just think that what I love about that resume is that, you were with Johnny Isaacson, which, if you're on the Johnny Isaacson team, you know how to work with people. That's at the core of everything he taught, everything he did. And, I remember asking him many years ago, why he did so much better with women than the average Republican. And he said, well, I had a 1099 business, a real estate business, where at any given time, my employees could walk across the street and get a job, and most of those employees were women. And I had to learn how to get along with women. 80%. He's 80% of his employees, he said, were women. But Martha, and you can appreciate, I think I've worked for two of the most successful politicians
that didn't like the politics of politics. They loved the policy, and that's Nathan Deal and Johnny Isaacson. I mean, Johnny would want to talk to you about business or education, and Governor Deal wanted to talk to you about economic development and criminal justice reform or whatever, literacy, whatever it may be. And that, to me, was what was so impressive. They focused as governor, as senator, as congressman on the issues that truly mattered and that were kitchen table issues. We're now talking about affordability again. Those are kitchen table issues. But that's what, Johnny and Governor Deal really focused on, and I'm very grateful for the time I was able to sue. But I miss Johnny. I know Governor Deal got remarried, and he's doing great. I miss Johnny. He was a great mentor and friend, and his saying was always "friends and future friends," which is a great moniker in politics.
Yeah, one of the good guys, that's for sure. So tell us a little bit about that policy discussion, mainly because you've now been traveling the state for almost a year. I mean, for a lot longer than that because you've been attorney general, but as a governor, a candidate for governor. And what have you learned, and how has it solidified your positions on things like tax policy?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We know that jobs and safety are the key issues for folks, and affordability has really risen to the top. I think we saw that a couple weeks ago, in the elections there, not just in Georgia, but around the country, that folks are focused on affordability, whether it is health care or whether it is housing, whatever it may be. But that's it. So as running for governor, there are four things I'm going to do, and that's lower property taxes, have safer streets, more affordable living, and good paying jobs. Those are the core of what Georgians are talking about. And it does not matter where I am in this state, Martha, people are talking about property taxes and assessments going through the roof. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or you're a senior, this is truly impacting those two groups, but everybody, quite frankly. So we need to cap property taxes, and we need to lower income taxes. But my plan is going to help Georgians. I know the Lieutenant Governor, Burt Jones, has talked about eliminating income taxes. That's really good for his family and for his business. But if we can lower income taxes, we can cap property taxes. But if you eliminate income taxes, it will literally lead to the largest property and sales tax increases in state history, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. But the second thing is people want to be safe. There's no doubt. You and I have talked about this repeatedly, about our human trafficking unit, our gang unit, now our organized retail crime unit. We need to be doubling and tripling down on keeping people safe in this state, because unfortunately we still have some DAs and some local governments that don't believe in keeping everybody safe. And we're going to continue to do that, as well. Affordable living, I just talked about it, whether it is housing or it's health care or education or whatever it may be. These are the issues at the forefront, and we've got to make sure that we drive down those costs so that we are not burdening the Georgia taxpayer or those that want to come here to work. And at the end of the day, the best welfare program is a good paying job. Governor Deal used to talk about that, and it is so true. Again, the transformative nature of a job, that is what has built this state. I am proud, again, that we started our run as the top state in the nation in which to do business. We brought in, the private sector brought in 84,000 jobs when I was the commissioner. That is truly transformative, but we cannot take it for granted, because in this world we live in, Republicans and Democrats see the world differently as it relates to jobs and the economy and safety. And we are one election away from having a Gavin Newsom or a Pritzker, or even our two senators, that see the world differently than the rest of us in the governor's mansion. And I'm not going to let that happen, because I'm the only Republican that can win the primary and the general, and I intend to keep Georgia red.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I get the most concerned about is that we have this. You said it, that if my father used to say something similar, when a man has a job, it solves a lot of problems, and it's not just a man now. That's the way he used to say it. But you've got to be able to get a job, and we've got to do a better job, not just at helping people at the Department of Labor the way we do help people who aren't working to get a job. We need to do a better job of communicating the jobs that are out there, that are the people that are out there in the market looking for better jobs in Georgia. We've got to do a better job at that, because this kind of technology way we've gone is not the way to do it. Because I talk to and Chris, I know you do too, I talk to so many people in their 30s that are very disillusioned because they feel like it's so much harder for them than it was for even their older siblings and their parents. And they want more interaction, and they want the state to get out of the way so that they can find the best job they can.
Well, and I think you're seeing, got a 21-year-old daughter, we have a 27-year-old daughter. If you went through COVID and you were separated from your friends, that also has changed your view on life.
Yes.
You want to be, and again, I don't care how much technology is in the world, and AI is here. We can talk about that. AI is never going to have a soul. Human beings do. They want to be together. They want to communicate. They want to collaborate, and we're seeing that more and more. I think is true. But as it relates, you're right, and I hear it from the folks that are in college or just out of college, concerned about what the future holds. But that job starts actually, at birth, from birth to age 5. What are we doing to make sure that literacy rates go up? I always had a mom or grandmother that wanted to read to me. That isn't the case with everybody. But how do we communicate? We start there. Then how do we align the jobs of the future with our pre-K, K-12, and then into our technical and university system? And yes, AI is here, and there's no doubt it's going to have an impact on some jobs. But I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal that said a state that is wise understands in this AI world, we better be doubling down on technical college system and those that can use their hands, because somebody's got to build these facilities and wire these facilities and maintain these facilities, and other jobs are going to come as a result. I want Georgia to be at the forefront of making sure that we maximize the best uses of AI, but also making sure that the guardrails are there as it relates to crime and scams and some of the other things that can occur. But we can either be leaders or we can be run over, and I want Georgia to be a leader.
Yeah, so folks, Chris Carr, Attorney General, he's running for governor. I'm supporting him. I think he's the best choice, and I look forward to you guys getting to know him as he travels around the state. If people want to help you, Chris, how can they do that?
Yeah, please have them go to www.carforgeorgia.com. We are also on Facebook. We are on X. We are on Instagram. Please reach out to us. I want to earn the vote of the people of Georgia. Remember, I've gotten more votes in the Republican side than anyone that's running, so we feel good about where we're going, and I want to make sure that this state stays successful.
Happy Thanksgiving, Chris.
Same to you, Martha. Take care.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.